Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at our second lesson in the series, looking specifically at Macbeth and the themes and characters. Now all of these videos are designed to help you prepare for the actual exam. If you do have any questions or concerns, please feel free to comment and let us know, and we'll try and get back to you as soon as we can. So first thing I want you to do is to have a look at the images that we've got there and try and think about the theme that we're going to focus on within this video. So as you can see there, we've got an image of witches, we have a bird, and then we also have the image of a ghost there as well. So the actual thing that we're thinking about here is the supernatural. So can you recall any key quotations that might be linked to this theme? Now if you're not too sure about this, if there's any quotations that you really can't remember, don't worry about it too much because we will go through it in a later part of the video as well. Class feedback. The theme of today's lesson, as I've already said, is going to be the supernatural. What I'd like to think about before we move on is just how confident you feel about this at the moment. So try and give yourself a rating out of 5. How confident do you feel if this came up in a real live exam right now? And what kind of things would you need to talk about in order to be successful in your response? So by the end of this lesson, you'll be able to recall some of the key quotations in relation to the theme of supernatural, understand how that theme is characterised in the play, and finally apply your understanding to your next steps in learning. Learning recap. Look at the themes below and attempt the challenges that follow. So we have supernatural and witchcraft, we have leadership, kingship and tyranny, femininity, masculinity, guilt, bravery and courage, and ambition. So the first thing I'm going to think about is which of these themes have you looked at already? Now if you're a returning viewer to this channel, you'll know that we've looked at the theme of ambition. If you haven't checked it out, it is also in the playlist as well. And can you recall any quotations from our last lesson that might link to any of these themes? So even if you haven't actually been following the previous video, you should think about each of these themes and try and think about how confident you feel about each of them and which ones you really need to go over to make sure that you're ready for the exam. Again, if there's any of these that you're really worried about, then please do get in touch and we can always create more content around these things as well. So look at the statements regarding the theme of the supernatural and identify which are true and which are false. So this is a really good idea to help you get to grips with some of the contextual elements around the play. So our first one then says people believed that supernatural elements could affect nature. Number 2, King James wrote a book on witchcraft called Witches and Stitches, The Dangers of the Dark Arts. Number 3, the witch trials was something that only occurred in the UK. Next we have people thought that witchcraft could impact political events. And finally, single women were often the primary targets during the witch trials. So if you'd like to pause the video here and go through it in your own time, please feel free to do so. Again, all I want you to do is just to see which ones you think are true and which are false. I'm going to have some feedback now in the next part of the video. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So on the left hand side then we have the true statements and we have the false statements on the right. So firstly then, people believed that supernatural elements could affect nature. Now this is true, and this is also something that we see quite often in the play. Specifically we see it when Macbeth actually goes back to see the witches for the second time, and he talks about the power that they have over nature there. Secondly, people thought that witchcraft could impact political events. This was something that was generally quite a suspicious thing held by King James, and obviously it was something he was very interested in, which is probably why Shakespeare decided to include that within the play. And then for a final true statement, single women were often the primary targets during the witch trials. Again, he had this idea that a woman, specifically a woman that's not married, that wouldn't fit the kind of cultural, stereotypical norms, might be someone that they suspect of being linked to witchcraft. Now for our full statements, we have King James wrote a book on witchcraft called Witches and Stitches, The Dangers of Dark Arts. So he did actually write a book on witchcraft, but it was called Demonology. And then the next one, the witch trials was something that only occurred in the UK. This is not true. This is something that was going throughout many different countries, and it was something that was kind of almost like a global event. So it's important to think about when we think about the supernatural is that it's not just this small isolated incident where people suspected that witches actually existed. It was actually something that was quite a widespread issue throughout society. Look at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. So we're sticking with the same theme that we just looked at, and this question says, starting with this extract, how does Shakespeare present the idea of the supernatural? In it you can write about how Shakespeare presents the idea of the supernatural in this extract, and how he presents the idea of the supernatural in the play as a whole. And this is going with AQA, so AQA have it for 30 marks of this question, with 4 marks for your links to the context. So within this one, it's really important to think about, not only do you need to demonstrate your understanding based on the extract, but you also need to think about the play as a whole, okay, so the rest of it as well, and that's where our quotations are going to come in a little bit. So as we look at the question then, I'd like to think about the challenges. So the first one is, how confident do you feel about the theme of the supernatural? Secondly, the extract we are given is from Act 4, Scene 1. Do you know what happens in this point of the play? The only reason why we're asking that is because we're trying to make sure that when you look at the play or have a question relating to the play, that you know it in quite depth, right? So you need to know what happens in each act of the play in case some of it comes up in the exam. And then finally, for our mega challenge, can you recall any quotations from the play that link to the theme of the supernatural? Look at the quotations below and work out the missing phrases or words from each one. So we're going to just go for 5 quotations to start off with, just to get us used to actually remembering some of these key ones that occur within the play. So the first one says then, is this a blank which I see before me, the handle towards my blank? Number 2, we have none of woman blank shall blank Macbeth. Number 3, come you blank that tend on blank thoughts, blank me here. Number 4, blood will have blank. And our final one, fair is foul and blank is blank, and by the pricking of my blank, something blank this way comes. So if you want to pause the video here and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. It's also important to try and consider our stretch and challenge task there as well. Can you put these quotations in chronological order and work out where they actually occur in the play as well? Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So for number 1 then, we have, is this the dagger which I see before me, the handle towards my hand, and that's in Act 2, Scene 1. For number 2, we have none of woman born shall harm Macbeth, which is in Act 4, Scene 1. And just to remind you, this is one of the prophecies that Macbeth gets the second time he goes to see the witches. Number 3, come you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here. Number 4, blood will have blood, and that's in Act 3, Scene 4. And number 5, fair is foul and foul is fair, and by the pricking of my thumbs something wicked this way comes. Okay, so we're going to move on now. We're going to start thinking about how this would apply to the actual exam question. So look at the response and attempt the challenges that follow. In this extract, Shakespeare presents a supernatural through Macbeth's vision of the dagger. Macbeth describes it as something that he can see but not touch, which makes him question his own senses. This suggests the supernatural has power over him and is influencing his actions. The dagger also leads him towards Duncan's room, symbolising how the supernatural is pushing Macbeth towards murder. In the play as a whole, the supernatural is presented mainly through the witches. From the beginning, they predict Macbeth's future, and their prophecies make him think about becoming king. Shakespeare also shows the supernatural through Banquo's ghost, which appears at the banquet and frightens Macbeth. Lady Macbeth also refers to the supernatural when she calls on spirits to unsex her. The supernatural is important because it shows how Macbeth loses control and becomes increasingly influenced by forces beyond the ordinary world. So if you want to pause it here and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. We're now going to use what we've just read to think about some challenges in the next part of the video. So if you want access to the full extent of the example responses, we have 3 different types. a high level, a mid level and a low level response as well. So what you can do is first of all look at the example that we just went through in the previous part of the video and try and decide what kind of grade you think this would achieve. Now if you're actually using the lesson that we used previously, you can use the success criteria that we made from the last lesson to give the response of what went well and an even better if. And if you would like to actually attempt this question, I'd like you to write the next paragraph in response to the question. If you need anyone to give you feedback or any advice, please feel free to get in touch. We're always happy to kind of help people along their way if they need it as well. So if you want to actually download the full extent of the extract as well as the PowerPoint, there will be a link included in this video as well. So now what we're going to do is just think about a little bit of the actual terminology that might help to boost our grades a little bit. So we're going to look at the terminology that's in the box on the left hand side and think about the challenges that follow. So the first one says then, out of all these techniques, which of these phrases have you heard of before? If we think about a super challenge, we think of which of these can you actually define? So it might be that there's a few techniques here that you've heard of before, but actually knowing word for word what it means might be a little bit challenging for some people. And then the mega challenge, can you link any of these to your understanding to the play as a whole? So we have a soliloquy, a side, dramatic irony, a refrain, in media res, semantic field, motif and trope. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So on our left hand side then we have our key terms, and on the right we have the key definitions. So for soliloquy, this is going to be a really important one. Again, you have one specifically with some of the central characters, most notably Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. So this is when a character is speaking by themselves. Soliloquy is a really good word to know. It also derives from the word solo as well, which you can see at the start of the word there as well. Next, aside. Now this is something that's often lost in translation, especially when you're thinking about reading the text as opposed to watching the performance. Now an aside is when something is not meant to be said to the rest of the characters on stage, only to the audience. So that's something that visually is a lot more beneficial when we're actually watching the play. Dramatic irony. So this is when the audience is aware of something that the characters are not. Refrain. This is a word or phrase that is repeated throughout the play, so such as fair is foul and foul is fair. In media res, which is when something is structurally started in the action. Semantic field, we have a group of words that have a common connection or a theme. A motif is a recurring image, symbol, sound or idea within a story that has symbolic significance and helps develop the overall theme. And finally we have a trope, a common character trait used in literature. In terms of our next lesson, we're going to be going over the following things. So we're going to recall another key theme in the play, understand how to approach an exam question, and apply your understanding to attempt an exam question, and track your progress. If you are attempting any of these exam questions, it's really important that you get someone to give you feedback and a mark so that you know if you're making progress. And again, if you do need any help or support, please feel free to reach out. So as I said before, if you do need any additional support or help, then new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, you can leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel Bookworm Teaching for more lessons and guidance on all things English. If you made it this far in the video, guys, I want to thank you for your commitment, and again, please do reach out if you need any help or support. Thank you, bye bye.